Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to our now weekly review of The Acolyte. This week's episode 6, Teach/Corrupt. Now, for the last few weeks, I've obviously been joined with the Archivist. Welcome again, my friend.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Me, specifically, I'm not a fan of this show. Episode 6 just continues this whole downward trend of the Acolyte. But for me, let's first focus on some of the things we liked about episode 6, because as you pointed out before we hopped on recording, as soon as we entered down that track of speaking negatively about the episode, it's just not, that's a train that is not going to be easily stopped. So
No.
let's go ahead and talk about a lot of the stuff that we liked about the episode. But I first want to give my overall thoughts. I did not like this episode. I do not like the show. I think that this episode commits the worst thing that television or a movie can do, which is be boring. I think it's just so massively boring of an episode. And that's so disappointing to me, because my first note that I took when I started the episode, first off, it's short. It's like 2 minutes longer than the other ones. How is this show $186 million and these episodes are so short, and a lot of these episodes lack set pieces? Like, that just doesn't add up in my mind. How can this show be twice the budget of Obi-Wan and have entire episodes without anything large scale? You pointed out before that you think it has to do with set design, which does look good, and character design, but the sheer massive amount of money that this show cost to make versus what we are directly seeing on screen just does not correlate. And I realized before I said I was going to speak positively before ripping into it, but I just have to get that off my chest. Like, this episode lacks even a set piece or like an action sequence.
That is true. Anything that looks like it would cost money. But this show is on track right now to be $1 million a minute. $1 million a minute. $1 million. And the fact that this is what we're seeing here is just mind-blowing to me. I think that episode 6 is in contention to be the worst episode of The Acolyte, in my opinion. I think episode 3, I forgot what the title was, the Witches of Brendok episode, was just as bad as this, but it's boring. Even the interesting characters are just not doing it for me, Chimere and Soul, because they're interacting with these two characters in Osha and May that I just don't care about whatsoever. Their allegiances and even their personalities change moment to moment in the show. What motivates them. And when you put me through whiplash like that for the last 6 episodes, and I can't even tell what the main characters are feeling moment to moment, that's just bad writing. And you know the worst part is the writing and all that stuff's free. That has nothing to do with money. You sit down and you write these characters, that costs $0 to do well. So not only is the money not on screen, but the writing's just not hitting for me. But with that said, let's talk about a few of the more positive parts of the episode. I'm going to try and force myself for the next few minutes to talk about like the 3 things that I liked in this episode. The series for me just started out as this mixed bag, and I liked some of the things that they were doing with the story. And last week's Lightsaber Duels were awesome. Did they top the prequel duels? I don't think so, but I thought that they were really good. I think that they are definitely the best lightsaber duels that we've had in the Disney era. But at the end of the day, is that just flashy lightsaber duels versus the substance of the product that we're getting? I mean, shoot, look back at A New Hope. The lightsaber duel, because of the time in A New Hope, is not flashy or anything. But those characters are meaningful because they're actual characters with a through line. We care about Obi-Wan Kenobi. We care about Luke. We're intimidated by Darth Vader, and we understand what is motivating them in that moment. And the lightsaber duel itself in A New Hope, between Obi-Wan and Vader, may not be flashy at all, but at least I'm invested. This is the opposite. We can have cool, flashy lightsaber duels, But when that's not happening, I'm not invested in any of these characters. I'm invested in the Sith because I'm a Sith fan, and I think Chimere is interesting. I wouldn't quite say I'm invested in him yet, but I just think that the duel's great, but at the end of the day, how far can a good duel really carry an entire series, especially when at this point we're 1 for 6 in episodes in terms of like a cool action set piece. All right, focus. Good things. What did I like about the episode? I think a lot of the lore is interesting. I think some of the stuff involving Chimere and the Sith training is compelling.
Yeah.
He definitely talks and acts like a Sith Lord, more so an apprentice than a master. He seems very inexperienced, especially comparing him to how other Sith Lords like Plagueis and Palpatine have manipulated their would-be apprentices. You can tell he's a little bit of a novice. I liked his explanation for a cortosis helmet and how it cuts individuals off from the world around them, so then it's just the Force and them. And I had parallels drawn between how Vader felt after he entered his suit, how he felt it sort of separated him from the world around him, and because of that, he felt like he could fulfill his Sith duties more effectively. So I thought that was interesting. What else did I think was interesting? He says that the power of 2 is something that compels him. So I'd love to see people talk about how he's not a Sith now. Also, Leslie Headland came out and said that there are 2 Sith in this series, which I guess is not a spoiler because it's not a spoiler to the show's creator. But 2 Sith are apparently going to appear in the series. And like I said, if she wants to put that out before her show is even done, that's her spoiling her own show at this point. So Chimere is a Sith. The Stranger is a Sith. He's speaking about the rule of 2. So I don't want to hear any of this stuff where he's just this random Darksider that, his appearance to the Jedi means nothing. It means nothing only because of how incompetent the Jedi are shown to be. I was talking to you off recording, but the annoying Jedi that followed Vernesta around this whole episode, 8 Jedi are dead. He's talking like this is some sort of common occurrence and that maybe just the native life of Kofar resulted in the deaths of 8 Jedi, including Jedi Masters, if you're speaking of Soul, and very capable Jedi. But we're just willing to write that off. That doesn't make any sense. The light whip pissed me off because we've been hearing about this light whip for months, and for it to literally just be like, oh, Vernesta has a light whip, we're not going to do anything. It's not going to affect any part of the plot whatsoever.
It's just a bug with it.
Yeah, the bugs that, am I supposed to care about these bugs also? Because it's like, oh, that bug was affected just because I was walking here. Isn't that something OSHA says in the last episode? But now the Jedi Master is just going to cut the bugs in half. Who cares? Who gives a shit, And at this point, I don't know where the characters are because they're so inconsistent. I don't know if I'm supposed to care about these stupid bugs. I just don't. I'm not enjoying the show. I'm sorry. What did you think, man?
Well, after that positive review, I think I'll talk about... I will say that kind of talking about Chimere and everything, I actually really like the way he talks. It's like his actions don't make a whole lot of sense, especially revealing himself to the Jedi and all that. But of course, at this point, that's beating a dead horse. But I really like the way he manipulates May throughout this episode. I will say that part of the episode where they were just on, freaking Sith Octu, it seems.
Yep.
They might Unknown make it Planet. Octo. Yeah, I don't know, man.
I think that's the twist that's coming in. It looks just like it. Why else would they call it an unnamed planet? Just name the planet if it's going to be it's going to be some big twist at the end. And wow, a connection to The Last Jedi. How mind-blowing of a decision for this series to make. Obviously, that's sarcastic. Anyway, go ahead, man. I'm sorry I cut you off.
No, you're good. You're good, man. But yeah, I actually really kept wanting the show to come back to that. I was actually sitting here thinking, while we do want to know what's happening with Sol and May, if this show had been longer, I would have loved an entire episode just about Osha and Chimera on this island. I thought that was actually pretty interesting. If they had sort of like a bottle episode, just focusing on this one location and this and have a kind of like a slow burn. What do you call it? I can't think of the right word right now, but basically a nice character arc moment for Osha where she's now struggling with her selfish feelings after sort of being wronged all these years, and she's tried to hide it, cope with it, and finally someone is giving her the keys. Someone is coming to her and saying, I give you permission to be selfish about your life and to seek the power you were denied. That is how you write a Sith manipulation. And they were right on the cusp. We were so close to greatness. As you know, I don't remember what his name was. I was about to make a really good joke, but I can't remember what his name was. Guy from Rogue One.
I'm just disappointed we're at episode 6 and we're getting Sith Training now. That's the plot of that's how the Acolyte was sold. We get to follow a dark side adept as they, as the Sith are in hiding, and the Sith are the underdogs, and the Jedi are this ruling force in the galaxy that controls not only people, but, say that they control the Force itself at this point and can dictate how others use it. All of that's interesting, but the series is far past half over at this point, and we're just getting little lines of Sith training. Why did you sell me a series about Sith training and the Acolyte, and we're just now barely getting into that stuff? Your whole premise, it's meant nothing. It all hinges, unfortunately, on May and Osha and how connected the viewers are to those characters. And I just have found, and I'm just not. I mean, there are people out there that might be, and I can see the show, working for them because they care about May and Osha. But they've just flip-flopped too many times, and I don't know what they even want. I guess that, Osha wants to wield her power just like Chimera does, and May felt angry towards the Jedi and therefore sought out revenge. But just a few episodes back, she was talking about, turning herself in, and now she's remaining hidden, and she's trying to get something out of being with Sol. I guess information. I don't even know where Sol stands now. I guess he's bad, or at least has done something bad. These characters are inconsistent. The plot of the show is inconsistent. It's sort of frustrating because the pace, I felt, was really good the last episode. I know I said a lot of bad things about the last episode, but that was far better than what we got here. I thought the pacing ramping up worked really well, but as a result of that, it's just hard when you bring that pace to this level and then you follow it up with the next episode, which is just a slog. I thought that this was a slog. I was so bored. I was bored nearly instantly. I don't care really anymore what's going on with May and Master Sol on board the ship. I was frustrated that Master Sol, if I were him, I was, operating under the assumption that he's a loyal Jedi Master, I just would have screamed the word Sith over and over again over the comm to the Jedi Temple if it were me. But
I was saying that same thing. I was like, just say the word. Just say the word Sith. That's all you have to do.
Or dark side, or, dark side warrior. Even say acolyte. Say dark side acolyte. Say anything. Because we even know there's an entire class of Jedi in Legends continuity whose job it is to seek out the dark side in the galaxy and to eliminate it. And I'm sure they would love to hear about the Darksider that killed 8 Jedi on Kofar, but, Sol never gets it out for some reason. Obviously, he has other motives.
I will say this, though, concerning Soul and maybe not. That's just what I'm going to call her now. Soul, I really like his emotion in this episode. And I know we've talked about that before, and I really think the actor for Soul is just absolutely carrying the acting of this show on his back. But there was a long moment in the episode where the camera just kind of held a still shot of him, and you could just like see his face going through all these emotions. Like the facial expressions really wowed me as far as his acting goes. I will say that as he is a top-notch actor.
He is, and the character of Soul's interesting.
He is. I really wish that we had a May and Soul episode and then an Osha and Chimere episode, which is what, would have been nice for this one, instead of intercutting between the two, because then we miss out on information on both.
Yeah, I guess one of my questions to you would be, do you feel any more connected to Master Soul than you did after the 2-episode premiere? Because for me, I like him, but I don't see his character really progressing all that much. I thought it was interesting the last episode how he, has a darker half to him, how Chimere was able to bring out a darker side to Soul, and I think that's interesting, but there's just, I don't know, it's just falling flat. The bright spots of the show are still bright, but when you couple that with more characters that I don't care about in May and Osha, and just the Sith training with Chimere, something that I've waited to see since I learned about the Sith as a kid and was reading, online about just anything I could about the Sith and was fascinated. This is stuff that I've wanted to see on screen, unironically my entire life. And to see it played out here in this way is really disappointing. And I've said this in videos. If you guys really want to learn more about the Sith and Sith training and Sith lore, the Darth Plagueis novel might be the best Star Wars book ever written. And I understand that comparing the Darth Plagueis novel to the Acolyte isn't really fair, but I just feel that if the creatives had maybe read the Darth Plagueis novel, that there would be so many gems of just brilliant lore and Sith manipulation and Sith training that they could have highlighted. I saw the scars on, and I'm not saying they haven't, it's possible that they have. I saw the scars on Chimere's back, and I just think it would be so much more interesting if those weren't given to him by his old Jedi master, but by the Sith master to teach him pain and how to harness that.
I thought that was the subtext.
Yeah,
you think it was a subtext that it. Yeah, I see. Whenever Osha mentioned that because he never confirmed he was he had a Jedi master. Osha just said, he just said he was tossed away by his master, and Osha said, "Your Jedi master," and he didn't respond. He just looked down, kind of weird. He didn't nod his head. He didn't do anything. I think he had a Sith master, and I think he's trying to Darth Millennial it and start his own rule of two. I think there's still another Sith out there. Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely another Sith out here. Leslie Headland said that we would be seeing 2 Sith in the series.
She said that in an interview. Unless that was a red herring saying that one of the girls is going to become a Sith by the end of the show.
Well, she said, I think also in the quote, there's something of, we can talk more about Legends continuity when the show is over, inferring that there is some sort of Legends Sith Lord in the background. Obviously, at this timeline, it would be Tenebrous. I don't think that her comment was referring to, one of the May or Osha becoming a Sith Lord. I think that if they were going to do another season, that would make sense, because becoming a Sith Lord isn't a process that happens overnight most of the time. Obviously, in the case of Anakin was christened as a Sith Lord, and then Palpatine was christened pretty quickly. But, these are exceptions. They're not the rule.
Right, yeah.
And I think that the show that is happening behind the scenes of this show is so much better than the show we're watching, if that makes sense.
If I have to give at least one more positive thing before I kind of join you on the other side, I will say I did find it interesting. Again, I really wish this show had just focused on Chimera and Osha in this episode, because the helmet thing was really cool. When he was talking about how it was, he finally name dropped Cortosis, and he said that it was a sensory deprivation helmet, which I actually wasn't expecting. And it cuts off your hearing, your eyesight. It just deprives all your senses, so it's just you and the Force. And we do know from earlier texts that when Jedi and Sith actually do that and connect themselves purely with the Force, they operate at just, beyond supernatural levels, if they can actually achieve that focus. And, they start seeing everything through the Force, and it's just they just become amazing for a little while. And, as we saw, he was able to just take out all those Jedi, and he knew exactly where each one was, because he was just kind of in that zone.
Yeah, and I'm not going to dispute that that's a cool line, and that's a cool part of the lore to, bring to light, but I just don't think that these one-sentence explanations are saving the show at all. I think there's got to be...
Yeah, you got me there.
I think that they're cool, but what is these little nuggets of cool lore in a slog of an episode?
So how about we talk about Naked Sith?
Yeah, that didn't that didn't bug me. I'm not gonna lie, it didn't bug me that much. I think that that's a really strange way to start off Sith training. Really strange way to start off Sith training. And I don't think it makes a lot. Obviously, we know why it's there. It's there so, people can freak out about it on Twitter. But I don't necessarily have a problem with it. I feel like it's a straight up waste of time. But that's about it. Yeah, I was surprised they did it.
Yeah, I was too. I was like, oh boy. Why?
But there was nothing wrong with it. I would say the stuff in the show that is more detrimental is just how straight up boring it was.
Yeah.
Dude, now my cat's making a cameo too. These cats love this show.
You probably heard mine on the other end. She's trying to crawl around underneath my desk, and I'm like, get out.
But I just think that it was weird, but I didn't hate it. I didn't like it, but I didn't hate it.
Yeah, it's just, I'm with you. It was just a really slow episode, and that's one thing I have a hard time forgiving any Star Wars show for being, is it can be outright bad, but if it's just boring, Star Wars, that's the one thing it can never be. Is you can't have Star Wars be boring. And that's the problem, and this is an entirely different can of worms, is that's the problem I had with Andor, is it was just boring. And that's the problem, that me and you have with this episode, is there's just really nothing more to say about that.
But Andor had characters and set pieces and stories, and I cared about what was going on, and they were consistent, and there were character arcs. Andor had boring moments, but it ultimately led to something pretty profound and interesting and new, like a new, fresh take on Star Wars. And Andor isn't the corner of Star Wars that I love the most. I love the Sith the most, but I can absolutely see why that was a hit for people that really, love the politics of Star Wars, and especially the politics of the Imperial era. I can absolutely see, the galactic oppression, and what is that like for the common individual in the galaxy, and how does the Empire move across the galaxy, enacting these large plans like the Death Star undetected. All of that stuff ultimately leads to something. Here, it's leading to, I guess Osha's gonna probably be bad at the end, and then May will probably have a change of heart and be good, and that will lead into, or maybe not good, but conflicted, and that will lead into a second season. But at this point, what are we really building up to here? This giant mystery that we've had since the first episode. What did the Jedi do on Brendok, and how has that affected, the future? But now it's just not really leading to anything. And Andor was 12 episodes long, and I believe that the episodes were longer for Andor. Here, we're having legitimately close to 30-minute episodes in only an 8-episode long series. It doesn't have time to build up like that. And I don't know why they're so short. I don't know why these episodes are so short. I don't know why they're so expensive. And it's a conundrum to me. It just does not make sense.
And why they're crawling at a snail's pace. Like, they're trying to build up this big mystery. And I'm like, get to it already. You're wasting my time. Like, these episodes are short, and yet they just crawl.
Yeah, they're short and boring. And that is just that's not good. I feel like when you're talking about an Andor, in the overarching look of things, in the whole series when it's over, if Andor has a few slow episodes, which it definitely does, that ultimately plays into how cool and grand the finales are, especially in like the arc of the Death Star. When you figure out that they're building the Death Star and they're prisoners, those are slower paced episodes at first, but they're ultimately building to something. These are slow paced episodes that I don't think are building to much, and they're just slow because they're boring. They're not adding to a bigger picture. And the bigger picture they are adding to becomes more muddled, and I become more and more disinterested every episode that passes, unfortunately.
You know, I'll tell you something that would have made this show like 10 times better is if all they had to do is literally remove everything that has to do with Osha and May. And I know that sounds wild, but it's like, if you just had this show about Chimere being a Sith apprentice, an Acolyte, if you will, you can keep the name if you want, and you have Soul like hot on his trail, and you know, it's just sort of this sort of cat and mouse show with Chimere doing a whole bunch of stuff, and then we mostly focus on him and his master, and you know, slower paced episodes are focused on his training, and we get a very intimate look at Sith life with a secondary character in Master Soul and the Jedi. I think that would have been a wildly more successful show and a more interesting show than this.
I agree with you completely. That sounds like a much more focused show as well. I noticed this week, not that I was in love with the characters of like Jecki and Yord, but at least they offered something to the episode. And they were compelling, and their different views on how they approached their Jedi duty was interesting. And I want to say that their absence was truly felt in this episode, because even in the previous episodes, when there were spots of brightness, this story that's going on between Osha and May has just, for me at least, been the least interesting part of this entire story, and the part that I care about the least. And I was more interested in Yord and Jecki and Soul and how they conducted themselves as Jedi during this time. And I'm interested as Chimere, but now that they removed those characters that have things going on, and I'm left with just Osha and May, which both seem to act the same. If you didn't know where they were, I don't think I could tell them apart. I don't think I could. Obviously, they're twins, but the way that they behave, I don't think I could tell them apart. What motivates them, I don't think I could tell them apart.
See, that's
it's just not a very good performance. It's just not a very good performance.
See, that's the thing that I actually wanted to talk about the most, is one of the problems that I'm having is that our two main focuses, our two main protagonists, if you will, I can't tell what they want at all. And they're not compelling because we don't know what they want. Like, May, maybe not, she keeps changing her motivations on a dime. And then Osha, she doesn't want anything. We haven't established a single motivation for her at all. Besides, you know, oh, she might want to bring her sister to justice, but she doesn't seem all that compelled to do so. And now that she's actually interacted with her sister, she's completely aimless. Like, neither one has a focused goal, and therefore the show itself is completely skewed.
Thank goodness Chimere shows up and just straight up says what he wants. He wants freedom. He wants to be able to wield his power how he wants to, not how the Jedi want to. He wants a pupil. Like, he comes out and he says these things. And because he says these things, we can connect with him because we understand what motivates him now. So we know that the writers can do it. They're just not being consistent with Mayarosha.
Yeah, that's the thing, is I'll say I actually really like Chimere. I mean, I guess really like is strong, but I do like him. I think I like the way he talks. I like the way he carries himself. I even like his clothes. I think his like the tunics that he wears actually look pretty cool.
Yeah, I think his design's good. I think people need to chill out when they're saying it's one of the best Sith Lord designs they've ever seen. I think people people need to take a breath. I know we're all excited, but like, he's in a black like cloak and he has a mask and a red lightsaber. Like, people are talking like this is reinventing the wheel.
Star Wars Legends. This is not even breaking the. No. Sorry, I was about to say this. Sorry, but his mask is not even breaking the top 10 best Sith masks.
No, but I mean, it is for people who I guess aren't fans of Legends, which is fine. You can not be a fan of Legends, but to even just come out and say that this design is just the best they've ever seen is just a little wild to me. Like, grasping at praises for the show. Chimere's cool. He fights sick. If anything, I would say that I would praise the choreography of the show. I think the choreographer, whoever is doing the lightsaber duels, did a phenomenal job. And I think the character designs are pretty solid too. But again, this is all aesthetic stuff. Like, the part of the show that we're supposed to be invested in, like I mentioned at the beginning of the review, the free part is what's really suffering. And I just hope that it's over soon. And I hope that one day we can get a really solid Sith story. And I wouldn't say that I absolutely hate the Acolyte. I would just say I'm really indifferent towards it. And for me saying that, someone that loves the Sith and loves Star Wars as much as they do, for me to be indifferent on a show like this, I think is telling.
You know, we talked about this last week, and you encouraged me to be a little bit kind of candid about, you know, what I told you off recording. I'm really eager for this show to be over too, because, you know, you look at the apathy and the kind of distaste that this show is setting in on a lot of fans. It's impacting even people's interest in Star Wars right now. And, you know, we see kind of some lower views on Sith content because people are just kind of like, nah, it's just not interesting right now because of the Acolyte. And, you know, for me, as both a Star Wars fan and as a writer, it's difficult to have this show go on impacting my work and the kind of reception that my own work gets because of circumstances completely outside of my control.
Yeah,
and
I can see that.
That's
frustrating.
It is frustrating, and I know it's frustrating for you too, more so actually, as a channel owner and proprietor, and you know, you're the one planning this stuff out and running this channel, and a Star Wars show is supposed to boost that engagement and get people involved, and we're all supposed to have fun talking about theories and breaking down these episode stuff. But when this show is just slow, boring trash and it turns people off to Star Wars, I just want it to be over.
I think what you're saying about, you know, the comments and the interest in the videos, I wouldn't be too concerned about the views, but what is a little bit disheartening is when, you know, we make a video about an aspect of the Legends lore and it's immediately flooded with comments like, the Acolyte's terrible, we don't care about Star Wars, we don't care about the Sith anymore. Those are the comments that are sort of disheartening, because I'm excited to read the comments on pieces of lore. I'm excited to hear what people have to say about pieces of Sith lore that we highlight. And, you can't knock those people. They're just being honest. They're saying,
Yeah.
look, the Acolyte's involving Sith lore, and it's involving fleshing out the Sith, and I don't find that interesting at all. So, therefore, because I find that so interesting, I'm finding, this video on Legends lore not very interesting because it doesn't really matter in the end. The creators of the show aren't following it. Why would I waste time delving into something that I'm disinterested in? And I can see that. Legitimately, I can.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, we're not going to stop. That's fair. Now, obviously, we're not going to stop highlighting old Sith lore because I love Sith lore.
No.
And I enjoy, producing the videos and, highlighting parts of Legend Star Wars that people are interested in. But it is a little bit, it's a little bit disheartening when the dialogue in the comment section is more focused around the Acolyte show and people's grievances with the show and how that's directly impacting their enjoyment of the Sith lore. Some people have a harder time separating the two. Some people have an easier time separating the two. Like, I could go and read the Bane Trilogy, and the Acolyte's not going to, affect my enjoyment of those books. But for some people, it can. And I see that criticism is legitimate.
I know this is kind of off topic, but you mentioned the Bane Trilogy, and oh man, you are the one who really likes the Darth Plagueis novel. For me, my heart in Legends Sith lore is tied completely to the Bane Trilogy. And today, I actually wrote I guess, you guys are going to see this coming out soon, but, there was a scene in the Bane books that I was kind of writing about, and it was the fight scene that Bane and Zana have with the Jedi. And oh man, the differences are massive between the way canon fights and Sith works and Legends, as in it's like so much more intricate, and exactly what's going on, and the precision that Force users have to have when they're engaged in combat. It was just amazing, and I'm honestly thinking about giving the Bane Trilogy a reread, because I was so just re-enchanted by Legends storytelling.
Mm-hmm. A part of that I thought was interesting, and just to be candid with the people listening right now, we decided to make that because people were saying that Bane revealed himself to the Jedi in his own trilogy. And while that is in a way true, when you actually read the duel and Bane's encounter and Zana's encounter with the Jedi, it is played out far different than it is in the Acolyte, where Chimere just chooses to show up in front of Jedi and reveal himself and even name drop Sith. So that's the whole reason we decided to flesh it out in the Path of Destruction, is to go in and read, okay, what are the circumstances revolving around this duel that Bane has with the Jedi, his last big confrontation with the Jedi. And for those that have read the book, that it's much more thought out and it has a lot of stakes. And I know that this is a criticism that we've levied in previous episodes of The Acolyte, so I don't want to harp on it too long. But Chimere deciding to just reveal himself to the Jedi so candidly and openly like that is something that very few Rule of Two Baneite era Sith in their right mind would ever do. And I mean, none of them would do that if they were in their right mind. Now, crazy ones, yes. But I think Chimere is he's not written to supposed to come off as crazy in these episodes. In fact, this whole episode goes to show that Chimere is a very logical person that has thought through a lot of his emotions and others' emotions. So that just throws away the whole idea that he's this insane Sith Lord that cares so very little for the plan of the Sith. Obviously he cares, which makes his decision to reveal himself to the Jedi even more of a conundrum.
Yeah, it's like he presents himself as very laid back and type B to kind of catch the person he's talking to off guard, but he's a very analytical person, and that's something that I think I don't know the actor's name, but that's something the actor portrays very, very well. I kind of like how laid back he is, because you really don't expect that from a Sith. So when he comes out with all of his philosophy or his insane fighting skill, it's, you know, it really does come out of left field, but in like a good way.
Yeah, there's good things going on with Chimere. There definitely are. But he's not the focus of the show. The show's not called The Apprentice, it's called The Acolyte. And unfortunately, the Acolytes are really just not doing it. Maybe it should have been called The Apprentice. And, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway. I didn't like this episode. Should we wrap it up? Just real quick thoughts.
Go ahead, man.
There have been good pieces of lore and good moments in The Acolyte. I think it's been surrounded largely by moments that are not very well thought out and are not very good. And this episode is boring. And that is one of the worst things you can do as a television show and as entertainment, especially when the concept behind The Acolyte is so interesting, and especially when they prove to us that they can bring up the pace and can deliver good action. And now just the fact that they are seemingly deciding not to because they want to flesh out these horribly uninteresting characters, I think that that's just a mistake. There's talent behind The Acolyte. There really is. But when that's not on screen, you just have to judge it by what's on screen. And for me, it's just not a show that I'm all that interested in. Now, I don't absolutely hate it. I don't think the creators should be like fired or never given an opportunity to do anything ever again. I would never go that far, but I can only speak to what I'm watching on my television screen, and what I'm watching is boring. And it should appeal to me because this is my jam, Sith lore, but that's just an afterthought in the writers, and it's an afterthought in the show too.
As far as my my final thoughts go, is I feel like I need to run into the arms of the old books and comics to comfort me as like a gag reflex. I honestly feel like after watching so much Kanan garbage and tasting all of this, I have to wash my mouth out with Legends content. That's exactly how I feel right now, returning to the Bane Trilogy, and that's all I've got to say.
Okay. All right, guys, we would love to hear what you have to say in the comments down below. If you liked it, you know, that's awesome. More power to you. I would love to hear why you like it. If you're somewhere in the middle, please tell us that as well. We honestly enjoy reading your comments, and we'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions on The Acolyte and the state of Star Wars as a whole. So please feel free to leave whatever you think down below. Thank you guys so much for visiting the channel today in our review. Stay tuned later this week as we'll be delving into lore videos. I'm going to try and get some lore out of these episodes of The Acolyte because I know people do enjoy watching those. And in the lore videos, we tend to keep our opinion out of it and operate just on, you know, what the show is giving us and pieces of legends. So if you're interested in that, we're going to continue to do that. But as always, my friends, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for giving us some of your time today. We just recorded an episode way longer than the Acolyte episode itself, so I hope you enjoyed at least some of it. As always, may the Force be with you, and have a great night.
See you guys next time.